The question is, do labs truly produce valuable information? Do they produce valuable innovation, and can they do so at scale? So to talk about that, I want to invite to the stage our next panel, starting with moderator Mark Logan, Senior Vice President of Innovation at Barclay; John Running, EVP and Director of Innovation and Technology at Hill Holliday; Keith Johnston, Chief Operating Officer of T3. Welcome, Keith. Rick Gardner, Chief Digital Officer of Brunner Beehive Lab; and Dave Vogelier, Vice President ACD of Technology at the Martin Agency. Gentlemen and lady, welcome.
Thank you. On the one hand, Sheldon just told us that, shared the Peter Drucker quote that innovation is one of two essential business functions. On the other hand, we had Stacy Mulcahy earlier this morning inviting us all to slap her for using the word innovation. So we not only operate at the intersection of technology and creativity, we also seem to operate at the intersection of infatuation and skepticism. Because certainly the agency industry is infatuated with innovation, and I think we rightly feel at some level that it's a core skill set that we must possess and an attribute that we must deliver to our clients, and I think that instinct is correct. But I also don't fault those who hold a certain degree of skepticism about whether agencies are really the true agents for innovation and whether or not we can deliver that. So this group is perfectly suited to address those two spheres of influence. So why don't, just as a mic check, we do a quick introduction. Please introduce your agency, yourself, and the lab or other innovation initiative that you represent. Rick?
My name is Rick Gardenier. I'm with Brunner. We're an independent agency out of Pittsburgh and Atlanta, about 200 people. I've been there 15 years as the Chief Digital Officer. The last 3 years, we launched Beehive Lab. And for us, the lab was important for a few things. Retention. We have Google down the street from us. They have almost 500 employees now. We needed a way to have an outlet, almost a creative outlet for a lot of our creative technologists. But also to change the culture and change the conversation. I mean, we've been a digitally centric agency for a long time, but we still need to continue to push to change the culture. We're now 16 people full-time. It's a part-time role for me, but we have 16 people made up of all different types of hybrid creative technology folks, which I think we'll get into in a minute.
Hi, my name is John Running. I lead the innovation and technology practice at Hill Holliday, a full-service agency here in town, founded in the 60s. Our lab, which was started a little over a year ago, is called Beacon, and our aspiration this year was to build 12 things, one per month. And I'm glad to say that we've done that. We're at 11, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I guess.
Yep.
All right.
My name is David Vogelier. I run the CT group and the Martin Lab out of Martin Agency down in Richmond, Virginia. We started the lab a couple of years ago to focus and experiment on new technologies, software and hardware, to kind of figure out how we can fit them into our clients' businesses and to do new types of storytelling.
Hi, my name is Tracy Ketasol. I'm with the Ignition Factory at OMD. Our lab is 20 folks across multiple disciplines, and we work within the media space, so our job is to influence what's happening within ideas in the media space.
I'm Keith Johnston. I work at T3. We're headquarters in Austin, Texas, with offices in San Francisco, New York. Chief Operating Officer. Through a lot of learnings, we don't have a lab. We actually have an innovation practice. We've decided to operationalize innovation.
Someone needs to innovate the sound system, I think.
So we operationalized innovation in...
It's just you, Keith.
It's not. And so what that consists of, now it's really loud. So what that consists of is that we have a couple of innovation directors that are essentially business strategists with a technology acumen and intuition for culture. They drive a methodology and a business research framework that we have. And it exists in physical tanks for every client that we have on the roster actually has a room within the three agencies. And they drive what's more or less a smaller and more nimble process that is all anchored on what we call the innovation match. So we ask our clients to take 5% of their budget at the beginning of the year so that we'll match it with 5%, whether that be resources or hard cost, for that to end up being something outside the realm of what we do for them on a normal basis. And that's resulted in a range of products, which anywhere from the contextual engine that we give them a perpetual license for 7-Eleven that connects the 9,500 stores to a mobile application, to UPS My Choice, which his goal was to eliminate the nasty little yellow sticky note that shows up on your door when you miss your package, and it saves UPS millions of dollars.
So, Keith, I want to follow up on something you said. You don't have a lab, and I think we've, in previous discussions, established that you are the resident lab skeptic on this panel.
Yeah.
So, why not? What's wrong with labs?
If they don't have a purpose, and we go through a concept that we call innovation purpose, innovation applied. And the reality is, if you don't have a purpose, if there's not some sort of business metric underneath, it's very difficult to have the right conversation with the right person for your clients. We benefit from now only 60% of our revenue actually comes from a marketing budget of some sort through this method. So we know it's pretty successful. And in essence, what we don't want to do is say that there's an individual group within the agency who is innovative and the rest of the agency is not.
Okay. So, anyone else on the panel want to take a swing at that? Is that does the idea that you have an innovation lab necessitate the view that the rest of the agency is not innovative?
I'll take it. We have innovation goals across the agency, so I don't think we set out to be the sole group that is the innovator. And I also say that I agree with you. I think we have to have a mission, and part of our lab is revenue producing that really is self-funding and is starting to scale. So I think goals, I think focus, I think a mission, some kind of financial goals to make it viable. But I think the kind of innovation that comes out of pure technology think tank is different than might come out of creative, that might come out of media, and I think that's why we formed it.
I'd like to take a swing at it too.
Please, take a swing at me.
So I think it's important to understand what we mean by innovation. And for us, it's not necessarily about making innovative things, but innovating on our own business practices and our own business model. And it's very hard to break your own business model to disrupt what you're doing unless you have a separate group that does that. So for us, it's going from doing what people typically would hire our agency to do to trying to do some of the work that we aspire to do. And without having a separate group to do that, I think it's almost impossible.
David?
Sweet. I'll jump in too. For us, we set up the lab specifically because I'm sure a lot of agencies deal with this with creative technologists in the agency. Nobody knew what they did. And they would just be like, hey, can you do social? Can you do analytics? Can you do this? And so one of the big driving forces for us was to create a lab so we can kind of showcase what we do in our own time. And from a revenue standpoint, I kind of conned it in as a training, so that's what we use as a job number. So we're not responsible for any revenue whatsoever. And it's helped out a lot. Yeah, that's really nice.
Well done.
I'll stand someplace in the middle on this one because our group is actually, our job is to influence media, and when we do that, we try not to be a walled garden of 6 innovators. It's just not going to work. But there's also, we have the luxury of working and thinking outside of where that media planning and strategy is happening and to come up with ideas. So it's someplace in the middle of that, and we are responsible for bringing revenue in.
So, John and David, you guys, I think, both touched on something that we talked about in an earlier conversation, and that is this tension between separation and integration. I think Christensen said a business cannot disrupt itself, and so there is that sort of need for the seclusion, the separation, and yet you can't have an impact unless you are integrated. Could you guys talk to that? How do you address that balance and that need, between those two poles? How do you personally, or how does your group strike that balance between separation and integration? What do you do to create those bridges?
Well, for us, we don't have any full-time employees in the lab. The CT group and the dev group, which is actually separate, are the main people that use it. But we invite people in. We do training lessons and things like that. So we consider ourselves to be integrated, not separated at all. The lab is more of a physical space for people to come and play, and it's the first 6 months were really difficult. Everyone kind of stood off to the side and watched what we were doing. But as more and more people said, started asking us questions, hey, can you do this for me? And we showed them, actually, no, you can do that for yourself. So we have one of our lead designers started doing furniture design for some reason. And he asked, could we 3D print him some very specific cabinet handles? And I told him, no, we couldn't, because I showed him the software he could design itself and showed him how to print it, and he doesn't come to us at all with it. And it's actually really great to see the success of that. So I think that's how we integrated, kind of through grassroots instead of forcing our way into different projects.
So on the end we have no lab, and then with you we have no FTEs, right? You have 16, that's right?
We have 16. It didn't start out that way. We started with 2 part-time creative technologists, really with no billable pressure. And I think that is important to know that there's an investment to start this, and it needs to come from the top, and there needs to be a belief that this is the right thing to do. But these internal sessions and the training sessions and a collaborative nature started to allow us to have conversations with different people. We can have conversations with sales directors. We can have conversations with COOs. We started to get projects. We started to do some interesting things that were engaging the on-the-go consumer that fell outside the realm of marketing. And that's really over a 3-year period, we were able to build some critical mass. And now it's a full-time place that we rotate people in here and there for learning.
John, how about you guys? How many
So
people?
we've got 20, but that consists of some creative technologists, developers, mobile developers, experienced designers, and digital production. So lots of different hats by a few different folks.
So it sounds like those are the types of job descriptions you'd find in the agency at large, though?
Well, well, to a certain degree, I would say yes. We didn't have as many of them before we formed this Department of Innovation Technology, and we created this mandate for us to be making things for people from brands. So rather than just showing them television spots or giving them sort of this push advertising, we wanted to engage with them in things that they would choose to do. And to do that, we felt we needed a different group of folks. Okay.
And Tracy, how about you? You've got some non-traditional folks in your lab team, right?
Yeah, we don't have any creative technologists. We have 20 people that are cross-disciplinary. We have a mathematician, someone from the Earth Science Institute at Columbia, experts in fashion, entertainment, trend forecasters, some designers, but mostly it's about cross-pollinating those ideas to then influence the consumer experience.
So how does an agency extract value from an earth scientist? Where's the payoff?
Adam will thank me for this. Adam actually is the person from Columbia's Earth Science Institute, and the way we get value out of him is he's often looking at trends within the areas and expertise that he has, and the rest of the team's job is to come up with analogies that partner those up with places that it looks like it doesn't match. So, for example, went to an innovation company out in Silicon Valley and walked them through, here's a really cool way we could look at how your technology powers the earth. And so he's way out there, and our job is to then match that up with what type of media or how we'll play into that.
Okay. On the topic of value, and since there is skepticism out there about the way that innovation labs or practices drive value, a question for each of you. What's the one most valuable thing that your initiative has produced for your agency? And Keith, I'll start with you.
Staying nimble. A lot of what comes out of the innovation practice, which is essentially just restacking the assets that we have in the organization, new processes, methodologies, new ways of thinking at our clients' business actually stems from that. And sometimes it starts with the innovation match, but just our methodology alone, just using a think tank method that everybody can work from and put them in a physical space and allow every discipline to be first to ask the provocative question puts us in a different place. And we carve out deliberate roles, whether that's whether it's perception or or a vernacular we use. For example, we don't call creative technologists in an organization. We call them technical architects. And for us, that is probably the same thing for most of your organizations. But, having a creative own their domain and a technologist own their domain and then be able to debate it friendly in a think tank environment yields a lot of things. It yields products, it services, or just innovation in their own brand campaigns.
Tracy?
One of the greatest values we've brought is the relationships with our clients, because what we're doing is bringing new ideas to them and using their media to help support where that consumer is. So I think we've seen relationships grow within that, within some of our bigger clients, and then bringing on new clients that see innovation coming out of the group, whether it's through thought leadership or trend reports or even some of the ideas that gain press.
Is there a specific project or product or outcome that you'd point to?
Well, we have two. One of our biggest clients is Pepsi, so we have had any number of places where they take risks with us that test technology and test where the consumer might be going, from reimagining what a concert is, to measuring everyone's biorhythm at a concert and influencing what the concert is, to some of the things we produce as a trend report quarterly. And in that, which I think everyone does that in some way, shape, or form, but ours is mostly grounded in what that cross-disciplinary thinking brings to bear.
Could you talk a little bit more about that concert experience? Because I found that interesting, and I imagine other folks would as well.
I could say roll the tape, but I don't have it. What we did at South by Southwest with Pepsi is we decided to reimagine the concert experience in a way that would allow users to connect to one another, allow users to connect to the fans to connect to the DJ, as well as then influence the outcome of that and unleash certain experiences every time they did something. So what we did is we measured, we hooked them up with light wave bands, which measured emotion, excitement, movement. We created an index for that. So as the music moved in a certain way and they created certain movements, what happened was, let's say they unleashed a Pepsi experience so that they would have then drinks delivered. If there was certain ways that they could change the music, the DJ then, what happened is a leaderboard came up of what kind of movement was happening and the light changed. So then the DJ changed his music. Then we had dance-offs where every person was then connected to their social footprint and you could see who was leading the most movement and dancing within one of these EDM experiences. And it won 2 Clios, which is from a media agency. That was a big deal for us. And what it did is Pepsi was willing to go the mile with us to experiment. It took several, a village to really make that happen. But in that experience, we said, what if we tried this? And we got people to go along with us. And then the media then informed that as well as the overall strategy for the brand.
Great, thank you. David, how about for you? What's the most valuable thing you think your team or lab has produced?
For us, like I said, we weren't created to do revenue, but this year we've accidentally started doing that. So we were concepting with teams and we were building prototypes that they would take to clients and clients would approve, and because they were great prototypes. And they would go to vendors and get costs to fully produce it, and they would be over the budget. Well, they would come ask us, can we take our prototypes to fully produced? And because we're inside the same building, we don't have an extra project manager and our own producer and our own creative director that they have to pay for. So we come in way under most vendors. So we actually started doing a lot of installation and small robotic projects like that and made revenue. So it was really cool.
Great. John?
It's hard to pick, but I think my favorite of the things that we did this year is a program from Shark Week, where we developed a separate app that runs in Xbox. Snap functionality. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's essentially a means by which on Xbox you can watch 2 different pieces of content simultaneously. It creates a right rail box for you to be able to pull in content from a web browser. So the idea was, could we get people to engage with an experience while they're watching Shark Week? What we recognized was that lots of people tweet and talk about Shark Week, and we wanted Dunkin' to be part of that conversation. They did a bunch of stuff in the restaurant with special donuts and people tweeting about that. And rather than create a second screen experience on using Twitter or on a mobile device, which is popular, we thought, could we have them be doing this on their primary device? And what we found was that people really liked it. The folks who actually used it spent an average of 13 minutes consuming the content, which were things like polls and tweets and other content that was on there.
Rick, how about you? Most valuable contribution?
Agencies have been trying to get out of this billable hour paradigm and project paradigm for a long time. And I think finally, and it's taken us some misses and failures along the way, but we've started to create products that are getting momentum. So one of them is a social media aggregation platform called Gatorboard, which we made a run at some of the startup conferences earlier in the year. We made it pretty far, didn't get quite selected. But it told us we were on the right track, and we've got Gatorboard now is being tested by somewhere between 500 and 1,000 companies and mostly brands. We haven't quite cracked the monetization code, but I think for us, it changed the way the agency thought about that.
Let's talk about that a little bit, and because that's been a thread of conversation that I've heard a lot about too, is sort of cracking the monetization code or the product management code. A lot of labs, a lot of innovation initiatives within agencies exist with the stated purpose to develop products or even spin off companies, and yet agencies have a pretty lousy track record when it comes to that, in part because product management just isn't a core skill set. Is that something that agencies should be attempting? Is it a good idea? Have you seen it succeed? Where are you guys in that effort?
Our failure early on, our failures were because we didn't have that skill set. Yet at the same time, we're working with startups, and we're actually helping take startups to market for some of our clients. And it felt to us like if we can't do it for ourselves, and we need to learn how to do it, how can we really help our clients? And so we've hired project managers now that have a product management experience that have come from startup companies, have taken products to market. That's helped a lot. It's changed how we write code. It's changed how we market. It's changed how we do user testing. So I think you're right. I think it's because we just didn't have the right skill sets that we're starting to build out.
So Keith, you guys are probably further along than anybody in this regard, and I think of all of the panelists here, you're the only one whose product I've actually used. So do you want to address that? I mean, it's a difficult leap from agency to product company.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, our two biggest stories are obviously 7-Eleven, not obviously 7-Eleven and UPS. 7-Eleven, just on the topic of product management, is really interesting for us because it started from a place of how do you reinvent convenience for the customer and connect 9,500 locations? And it started as how do you message the customer that convenience still exists in 7-Eleven, and it ended up being a mobile application that had a contextual engine under it, and that literally when it's cold out there, it offers you a cup of coffee. When it's hot, it offers you a Slurpee. But it then became bigger than that. It became a software platform that we had to evolve. Well, we weren't built for Agile, pure Agile. We weren't built for epics and delivering releases, on a really quick cadence. So we did hire a project manager that worked with a producer who was pure Scrum Master. And this platform now has evolved to something at which that, on a almost bi-weekly basis, we're actually pushing promos into this platform. It's a software platform that's now designed for all those co-op dollars that every retail uses to push a product, whether it's for them, it's a new potato chip or a new pizza, product or what have you. It gets a campaign and it gets pushed into this mobile application. Well, that is purely one part is managing a client that's building a promotion, and the other part is if the app can't do what we want it to do for that one specific client or promo, you need to tweak the app. And so we had to completely reinvent our processes for that, at which that team alone is a software company within our agency.
Okay, great. One thing that we sort of touched on, especially in the discussion earlier this morning, and I think has come up a little bit today, is there's some hard lessons to be learned along the way of starting up a lab and growing it. So I think it's almost axiomatic in lab circles and in innovation talk that we need to embrace failure more. We need to learn to fail faster, get to the wrong answer faster. I'd love to hear from any of you who want to take a swing at it. What's a great failure that you've had? What's a lesson learned that you think is worth sharing?
I've got one. I've got a number.
You don't have to share how many.
So we developed a Pebble application for one of our clients, and it was great from my perspective. The users liked it. It was to help them pay faster, which was really part of what the brand was all about. I don't want to name the brand because it was such a failure. But the point being, we ultimately didn't get to launch it because of patent liability issues, which we hadn't ultimately really looked into. It turned out that there were reasons they were really shy about even just doing something as innocuous as a QR code, which frankly is in the public domain, and they still didn't want to do it. So I think it's critical to take that stuff into account if you trying to do is not enough to make it a terrific thing that solves a problem that is right for the brand. Those are all great things, but if ultimately the attorneys are going to shut it down, you start wasting your time.
Any other shareable failures?
Sure. So we have a couple cookie brands, and we ended up making in the lab this weird contraption that will track your face, and then when you open your mouth, it'll shoot a cookie at it. It took a few weeks of development and got it working perfectly, and we showed it off, and the client was like, "This is amazing. We're not going to do this at all. It is a serious choking hazard." And we're like, "Yeah, I guess it is," but it was really cool. So we realized kind of at that point, we're like, we should probably talk to someone on the like adult side first before we start doing these little toys.
If you're not scaring them, you're not doing your job.
Exactly. Yeah, we scare them.
Anyone else?
I've only been there a short time, so check in with me next year.
All right. Well, one of the lessons I learned from running this panel last year is that we didn't give enough time for audience questions. So I want to make sure to correct that failure this year. So for any of you who have your own lab or are interested in starting a lab, these guys are a great source of knowledge on what to do and what not to do. So any questions out there about innovation practices, labs, et cetera? So the question is, how do you pitch innovation, or do you just go and do it through guerrilla projects?
For our lab, we make a prototype or a proof of concept before the client ever sees it, before the client ever hears about it. We think we honestly think for especially for really innovative stuff, it's a complete waste of time to have a slide deck trying to explain what the experience is going to be instead of just showing them. From my perspective, if I'm trying to sell something to a client, I think it's a lot harder for them to say no to something they're holding in their hand than a slide on a TV.
Is the question, how do you pitch innovation to clients, or how do you pitch it internally?
For us, for our agency, it depends on the creative director, honestly. So some creative directors, I can walk them through the idea. The other ones, I do the same thing as if they were a client.
I think personally, I think you need an executive champion. I guess I was fortunate because I'm on the executive team, and we talked a lot about this before we launched it. We had that commitment. But I think an executive champion that is really going to embrace it, because it is an investment, especially up front. And you will fail, and you're not going to create value right away. So you need to be able to have an environment that you can play in that allows for that. So to me, that's number one thing. I have a 10 kind of top 10 out on SlideShare if you want to take a look at it. But I think the number one is really that executive buy-in from the beginning.
And I'll add a little perspective there too. I don't think that an executive buy-in is all that hard to get to. When I think Sheldon shared the stat, only 32% of clients feel that integrated agencies are doing a good job of extending and enhancing digital. There's a ton of fear, and I think most traditional or integrated agency executives know that perception is out there and know that that's a struggle. So in some respects, it's a pretty easy pitch to make.
I guess I would add one more thing to that. Being the executive champion because I'm a technologist by trade, is that you just have to make a conscious commitment to make that through your entire process. So whether it's a pitch deck, don't put the innovation at the end of the deck and call it an extension. Internally, put the entire story arc of technology through the entire process. And allow it to be a part of your process no matter what you do, because technology is small and large in just about everything we do, at least.
Great perspective.
After you've had buy-in and a lot of stuff running, can take their own approach and operate the lab with. Can you talk a little bit about how you go about saying this is the value we create for the
So I think the question is, how do you continue to justify your existence after you've brought the lab into being?
For me, it was about negotiating success with the people that I had to get buy-in from. Part of that was about getting some recognition in the industry. Winning awards is a good thing always, although I kind of hate that. I think that you'll know it. You'll know success when you see it, and people are going to want more of that.
I think create a scorecard. that's multifaceted. So part of it could be starting small. Maybe it's influencing client work. Maybe it's a small project. Maybe it's PR. But I think create a scorecard that you can measure yourself up, against, or the team against next year, and just build on that. And over time, it would scale. But I think, also think about the team members and allies that you can bring with you, and have more of a team approach. And if it's cross-discipline, I think all the better.
Mark, you had a question?
Yeah. If I typed correctly, I think what you said earlier is you ask your clients to take 5% of the budget, you match it with the innovation practice.
Yeah.
How did you start doing it? Did you have one of those magic clients that just said, yeah, we're going to check you? How do you, without a track record of doing that, how do you establish it?
So
Yeah.
the question is, how do you get started getting clients to pay for this, right?
Yeah, so I'll parlay out off the question we just asked, which is one of the reasons I'm a little revenue obsessed is because that's the easiest conversation to have with your client. If the innovation project yielded some sort of result, particularly when it's attached to dollars, it's going to be just easy to talk about. And it likely gets your client promoted, and they like that too. So once you start that track record a little bit with just one client, you start to kind of get, how you frame the conversation, which is you've been with us for a couple of years, we know your business, and believe us when we tell you that we see a couple of business opportunities that we would like to invest in, but it's a better relationship, a partnership, to the point of don't be a vendor, be a partner. If we put some skin in the game, you put some skin in the game, and we'll get to some sort of result. If we're not happy with the result, we'll kill the program. But if you are, it continues. So UPS My Choice for us is just that. We solved the business problem. It became a platform. Now it's rolled out in 37 different countries. It saves them money. We get to continue to innovate on that. And then we use that as a use case for 7-Eleven, for Allstate, for General Mills, for everybody else that we have.
Any other questions?
Over here.
Yes, Sheldon.
How do you manage the intake process, the brief process for your innovation teams? They've got to innovate in a certain space. How do you think about briefing that?
Anyone want to tackle that?
We have our mission, it hasn't really changed, is inventing new ways to engage the on-the-go consumer. So that's broad enough that there's a lot of room to play in there, yet it's narrow enough that it still stays true to who we are as an agency, which is about engaging consumers and reaching them. So within that includes mobile and content and ways of working. There's a lot of things in there, but we kept the brief fairly broad on purpose. We want to really stifle things a whole lot.
I'll throw in some perspective too. We run a program and have done since the early days of our lab called Rotation Week. One of our missions is cultural innovation acceleration. So it's not simply being the guys with all the cool toys. It's getting the entire agency to adopt new technologies and adopt certain patterns of behavior. So we actually work with each of the account teams to generate briefs on a monthly basis. And then we bring a multidisciplinary team, including the lab team, but also other folks from the agency together. And in 1 week sprints, they go from blind brief to working prototype that they have to demo on Friday. So we get our briefs from the account teams who are working closely with the clients. Other questions? Yes.
Whenever I hear title innovation, I think it's part of that environment going on. But I'm just curious to know if there are sort of areas that you are particularly embracing and wanting to do. It's just not getting people serious. Is there something on your wish list that you wish you could work through, but you're just not getting any takers at the moment?
Awesome question. What's on your wish list that you're not quite able to push through?
I actually keep a checklist called a wish list. So that's very funny. I put it in there and I say, here's my wish list, guys. We work a lot with startups, and I think one of the things, we've had some proven success and results there that help our clients, but I think one of the places that everyone is playing right now is participating in incubators, participating in accelerators, working with VCs. So that's something that the clients ask you to put skin in the game, and the agency as well. So I see that as something we wish we could do more of. It just takes a lot of people to do it, and but the opportunities are there to figure out what will work for the big brands when we do that. So that's my wish list, and I wish I could do more of it.
I've got a quick follow-up question on that. You know, we talked a little bit about working with startups, and I think, again, it's sort of axiomatic in innovation circles that great ideas come from startups, and all agencies should embrace startups and be like startups and work with startups. And yet, I know from personal experience that it's actually really incredibly difficult to do that. And you know, we were talking earlier about when we've served as Techstars mentors and things like that, that all the startups really want from agencies is marketing advice, right, and marketing services. Yeah, so I'm curious, what value have you guys, you know, derived from working with startups, and is that really a viable model? Is that a way to deliver value ultimately to clients?
I'll take a really quick stab at it. One of the things we see, again, is we just try to, if we see something, it might not be the right startup, but then it helps spark another idea. So sometimes it's just association or matching up. That's probably not right for us, but let's build it on our own, or let's figure out if someone else can do it more nimbly. So I think it's just about idea generation for us a lot of times. Other times it's working with them to build their model, like we did with Shazam and Flipboard.
Keith?
So we actually look for startups that actually align usually with a piece of our portfolio. And I'll use an example. We have invested in a startup that's an IP light switch company, which is near and dear to one of our biggest clients, NRG. And the deal for us is, yes, we can help you with your marketing, and we did all kinds of fundraising and new websites and all that stuff. But what we found is they also needed Python engineers, and we have 50 developers and engineers in our Austin, Texas headquarters. And to expose our engineers to a startup concept, an engineering problem that they may not get exposed to, is how we choose our startups. And so if we can bring our engineers along and then do some sexy sizzle videos for these companies, it's a deal, and we'll invest. And that's kind of our criteria.
Great.